The dust was so thick I couldn't see my own boots. The radio crackled with static, voices bleeding into each other like ghosts in the sand. Then I heard it, a voice speaking Arabic through the chaos. Enemy position confirmed. My finger found the trigger. One shot, clean, professional. When the dust settled and I moved closer to check the body, I saw the name tape on the uniform. Miller, James Miller. The same Miller who shared my bunk for 8 months. The same Miller who showed me pictures of his daughter every single night before we went to sleep. I had killed my best friend. If this story reaches you, if somehow these words find their way to your heart, I need you to understand something. Some memories don't just fade away. They live inside you like a second heartbeat, constant and unforgiving. Before we go any further into this darkness, I need to ask something of you. Hit that subscribe button, not for me, but for Miller. For every soldier who never made it home, for every story that died in the sand, leave a comment, share this video, because these voices, these forgotten voices, they deserve to be heard. They deserve to be remembered. The dead have no voice unless we give them ours. My name is Marcus Thompson, Staff Sergeant, 3rd Infantry Division, United States Army. I served 2 tours in Iraq from 2004 to 2006, and again from 2007 to 2008. I'm 42 years old now, married to Sarah, father to 2 beautiful kids who still don't know the whole truth about what happened in Al Anbar province on March 15, 2008. I live in a small town in Ohio, work at a hardware store, coach Little League on weekends. To everyone around me, I'm just another veteran who made it home. But they don't know about the piece of paper I carry in my wallet. They don't know about the name written on it in my own handwriting. Miller, James, KIA, friendly fire. And underneath, in smaller letters that I can barely read anymore because I've folded and unfolded that paper so many times, I'm sorry. The thing about war is that it changes you in ways you never expect, not just the obvious ways. The nightmares and the jumpiness when a car backfires. It's the smaller things, the way you can't sleep without checking the locks 3 times, the way you flinch when someone approaches from behind, the way you memorize every exit in every room you enter. But for me, it was something else entirely. It was the weight of a name, the weight of a friendship that ended with a single bullet from my rifle. Fob Liberty, Al Anbar Province, Iraq, March 2008. The desert was unforgiving that year. Sandstorms that lasted for days. Temperatures that swung from freezing at night to over 120 degrees during the day. We'd been there for 6 months, and the insurgency was getting bolder, more organized. IED attacks were happening almost daily. Sniper fire from buildings we'd cleared just hours before. It was like fighting shadows, except shadows don't leave roadside bombs that can turn an armored Humvee into twisted metal and screaming. Miller and I had been assigned to the same squad since we arrived. James Miller from Cincinnati, Ohio, 24 years old, married to his high school sweetheart Linda, father to a 3-year-old girl named Emma who he talked about every single day. He had this ritual before every mission. He'd pull out his wallet, look at Emma's picture, kiss it once, and say, "See you tonight, princess." Every single time. Even I started saying it with him toward the end. Our bunks were right next to each other in a converted shipping container that housed 8 soldiers. Metal walls, no insulation, hot as hell during the day, and cold as ice at night. But Miller made it bearable. He had this way of finding humor in the worst situations. When the chow hall ran out of decent food, and we were eating MREs for the 3rd day straight, Miller would pretend he was a food critic for some fancy magazine, describing the exquisite notes of preservatives in the beef stew. When mortar rounds were falling close enough to shake dirt from the ceiling, Miller would rate them like earthquakes. That was at least a 4.2 on the Miller scale, he'd say, completely deadpan. We'd sit together in the mess hall, clean our weapons together, pull guard duty together. After a while, you stop being just soldiers and start being something more. Brothers, maybe. Family in the way that only people who've shared life and death moments can be family. Miller knew things about me that I'd never told anyone else. About my father's drinking, about the panic attacks I'd had since I was a kid, about how scared I was that I wasn't cut out for this war, this responsibility of keeping other people alive. And I knew things about him, how he'd wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, calling out for his daughter, how he'd volunteered for extra patrols because sitting still made him think too much about what could happen to him, what would happen to Emma if he didn't make it home, how he'd started taking pictures of everything, the sunrise over the desert, the faces of Iraqi children we'd meet during patrols, even pictures of our terrible living conditions, because he wanted Emma to see where her daddy had been when she got older. The missions were getting more dangerous. Intelligence reports suggested that insurgent activity was increasing in our sector. We were conducting daily patrols through villages where every door could hide an enemy, every window could conceal a sniper, every pile of trash could be hiding an improvised explosive device. The stress was wearing on everyone. You could see it in the way guys held their rifles a little tighter, the way conversations got shorter and more focused, the way laughter became rarer and more forced. March 15th started like any other day. Aero 500 Reveille, cold shower from a water truck that hadn't been cleaned in months, powdered eggs that tasted like cardboard, and bitter coffee that was somehow both too strong and too weak at the same time. Miller was in good spirits that morning. Emma had taken her first steps the week before, and Linda had sent a video on a CD that took 3 weeks to arrive through military mail. Miller must have watched that 15-second clip of his daughter stumbling across their living room about 50 times. He kept showing it to everyone, even guys who'd already seen it 10 times. "Look at her go, Thompson," he said, holding his laptop screen toward me, while Emma wobbled across the screen in a pink dress that was too big for her. "She's gonna be running marathons by the time I get home. She's got your stubborn streak," I told him. Look how she keeps getting up every time she falls." Miller grinned. "Linda says she's got my mouth too. Won't stop babbling, even at 3 in the morning." He closed the laptop carefully, like it contained something precious, which I guess it did. The briefing that morning was routine. Patrol through 3 villages in our sector, check on local police stations, distribute some humanitarian supplies, show the flag. Nothing we hadn't done dozens of times before. The only difference was the weather report. A sandstorm was moving in from the west, expected to hit our area around 1400 hours. Command wanted us back before it arrived. "Keep your comms tight today," Lieutenant Rodriguez told us during the briefing. "Weather's going to play hell with radio signals once that storm hits. Stay close, watch your sectors, and let's all come home for dinner." Miller was assigned to the 2nd Humvee, mine to the 3rd. Before we rolled out, he came over to my vehicle and knocked on the window. I rolled it down and he leaned in. "Thompson, you still owe me $20 from that poker game last week. I owe you 15, and only because you cheated. I'm gonna collect when we get back," he said, smiling with interest. Then he did something he'd never done before. He reached out and grabbed my shoulder. "You watch yourself out there today, man. Something feels different." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but Lieutenant Rodriguez was already calling for everyone to mount up. Miller jogged back to his Humvee, and I watched him climb into the gunner's position, adjusting his helmet and checking his rifle. The last time I saw him alive, he was waving at some Iraqi kids who were watching our convoy from behind a concrete barrier. The patrol started normally. 3 armored Humvees moving through dusty streets lined with concrete barriers and razor wire. Children running alongside our vehicles, some waving, others just staring with those old eyes that Iraqi children developed too early. Women in black abayas hurrying into doorways when they saw us coming. Men standing in clusters, watching us with expressions that could have meant anything from curiosity to hatred. The first village was quiet, too quiet. Usually there were vendors selling fruit and cigarettes, mechanics working on cars, the normal bustle of daily life. But today the streets were almost empty. A few stray dogs, some chickens pecking at garbage in the gutters, but hardly any people. "Ghost town," Miller's voice came through the radio from the 2nd vehicle. "Where is everybody?" "Stay alert," Lieutenant Rodriguez responded. "Could be nothing, could be something." We distributed the humanitarian supplies to the local police station. Medical supplies, school supplies, some food packages. The police commander, a heavy man named Hakim who spoke broken English, seemed nervous. He kept looking over his shoulder, checking his watch. "Is there something we should know about?" Lieutenant Rodriguez asked him. Hakim shrugged. "Always something, Lieutenant. Always something." But he wouldn't elaborate. The 2nd village was the same. Empty streets, shuttered shops, an atmosphere of waiting for something to happen. We completed our checks and started heading toward the 3rd village when the sandstorm hit earlier than predicted. The wall of sand came out of nowhere. rolling across the desert like a brown tsunami. 1 minute we could see for miles. The next minute we couldn't see the vehicle in front of us. The wind hit our Humvee so hard it rocked on its suspension. Sand found its way through every crack, every opening, coating everything in a fine layer of grit that made breathing difficult and visibility nearly impossible. All vehicles. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio. Reduce speed. Maintain visual contact. Watch for... The transmission cut to static. Our driver, a kid named Henderson from Alabama, slowed to a crawl. The convoy spread out as each driver tried to navigate by following the taillights of the vehicle ahead. What should have been a 15-minute drive to the third village stretched into an hour of creeping through a world that had turned the color of dried blood. That's when we heard the gunfire. At first it sounded distant, muffled by the wind and sand, but then it got closer, and we realized it was coming from multiple directions. Our convoy had been ambushed. Contact left! Contact left! Someone screamed over the radio. Taking fire from the building at 2 o'clock. RPG, RPG. The radio exploded with voices, everyone talking at once, coordinates and warnings overlapping until it became just noise. Henderson floored the accelerator, trying to get us out of the kill zone, but the sand was so thick he drove us straight into a concrete barrier. The impact threw me against the door hard enough to see stars. Everyone out! Everyone out! Sergeant Williams, our squad leader, was already opening his door. Set up a perimeter. Return fire. We bailed out of the vehicles and found whatever cover we could. I ended up behind a low wall next to what looked like an abandoned gas station. The muzzle flashes from enemy positions looked like fireflies in the brown twilight of the sandstorm. Bullets snapped through the air overhead, that distinctive crack that means they're close enough to kill you. I keyed my radio. Thompson to all units. I have eyes on muzzle flashes bearing north, approximately 200 meters. Static. Thompson to any unit. Do you copy? More static. The sand was playing hell with our communications, just like Lieutenant Rodriguez had warned. I could hear voices on the radio, but they were broken up, unintelligible. I caught fragments, moving east, casualties, need backup, but nothing complete enough to understand. The firefight lasted forever and no time at all. In combat, time becomes elastic. Seconds stretch into hours when you're waiting for incoming fire to stop. Hours compress into seconds when you're moving from cover to cover. All I knew was that I was alone behind that wall, trying to return fire at muzzle flashes I could barely see, listening to the sounds of battle happening all around me, but unable to see my fellow soldiers or coordinate with them. Then I heard movement to my right, footsteps in the sand, trying to be quiet, but audible over the wind. Someone was flanking my position. I pressed myself against the wall and waited, rifle ready. The footsteps got closer. Through the swirling sand, I could make out a figure moving toward me, rifle at the ready. Enemy combatant had to be. No friendly forces were supposed to be in that area. but I needed to be sure. I keyed my radio one more time. Any friendly forces moving east of the gas station. Static and broken voices. Then, clear as day, I heard someone speaking Arabic. The voice was coming from the direction of the figure I'd spotted, and it was definitely Arabic. Enemy forces using our radio frequency, which sometimes happened when our encryption got compromised. Rules of engagement were clear. Positive identification of enemy combatant, clear threat to friendly forces, authorization to engage. I lined up my shot, center mass, the way we'd been trained 1,000 times on 1,000 different ranges. Breathe in, breathe out, squeeze the trigger slowly, follow through. The rifle bucked against my shoulder. The figure dropped. One shot, one kill, clean and professional, just like training. The sandstorm began to clear almost immediately after that, as if the desert had been waiting for that moment to reveal what it had hidden. The wind died down, the wall of sand settled, and suddenly I could see the battlefield clearly for the first time in 2 hours. I could see the rest of my squad, taking cover behind their vehicles about 50 meters to my left. I could see the enemy positions in the buildings across the street, already abandoned. I could see the scattered equipment, the spent brass casings, the impact marks on concrete walls, and I could see the body lying 20 meters in front of my position. I approached carefully, rifle still ready, the way we'd been trained. Always check your targets. Always confirm the kill. Always search for intelligence or weapons. The figure was lying face down in the sand, arms spread wide, rifle a few feet away where it had fallen. Standard combat load, body armor, helmet. I rolled the body over to check for identification. The name tape read, Miller, James Miller, my bunkmate, my friend, the man who showed me pictures of his daughter every night, the man who'd worried about something feeling different that morning, the man who'd told me to watch myself. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. There was a small hole in his chest armor where my bullet had found the gap between ceramic plates. A perfect shot, a professional shot, a shot that had killed the wrong man. I knelt there in the sand for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, staring at Miller's face, trying to understand what had happened. The radio chatter I'd heard in Arabic. It must have been from an actual enemy position, bleeding over onto our frequency just as Miller was moving to link up with my position. The timing had been perfect and terrible. I checked his radio. The frequency was correct, but the encryption was malfunctioning, probably damaged during the firefight. He'd been trying to call me, trying to let me know he was moving to support my position, but all I'd heard was static and that Arabic chatter from somewhere else entirely. In his left chest pocket, I found a photograph of Emma, not in his wallet, but loose in his pocket, like he'd been looking at it recently. The picture was bent and creased from being handled so much. Emma in a pink dress, arms outstretched, taking those first steps that Miller had been so proud of. On the back, in Miller's handwriting, it said, "For Daddy's friend Thompson, thanks for watching out for me. Love Emma and Daddy too." He'd written it for me. He'd carried a picture of his daughter with my name on it, I heard voices calling my name. The rest of the squad was regrouping, doing head counts, checking for casualties. I had maybe 30 seconds before they reached my position. 30 seconds to decide what to do with the truth. I could have told them what happened, filed a report, explained about the radio malfunction, the confusion, the Arabic chatter that had led me to believe Miller was an enemy combatant. It would have been investigated, certainly. There would have been interviews, paperwork, maybe even a court-martial, but ultimately, it would have been ruled accidental death, friendly fire, one of those tragic mistakes that happen in the chaos of combat. Instead, I made a different choice. I dragged Miller's body to a position where it looked like he'd been hit by enemy fire from the buildings across the street. I placed his rifle in his hands, aimed toward the enemy positions. I fired several rounds from his weapon toward those same positions to explain the gunpowder residue on his hands. When Sergeant Williams reached me, I was performing CPR on a dead man. "What happened?" Williams asked. "Sniper," I said. "Got him clean." I tried to. I gestured helplessly at Miller's body. Williams knelt beside me and checked for a pulse he knew he wouldn't find. "He's gone, Thompson. I'm sorry." The lie was established, written into the official record. Miller, James, Specialist, KIA, enemy sniper fire, posthumous Purple Heart, flag-draped coffin, military honors. I attended his funeral in Cincinnati 3 weeks later on emergency leave. Linda, his widow, a small woman with Emma's same bright eyes, thanked me for trying to save his life. Emma, now walking confidently, toddled around the funeral home in a black dress that was too big for her, not understanding why everyone was crying. "He talked about you all the time," Linda told me at the reception after the service. "Said you were like a brother to him. Said you watched out for each other over there." I gave her the photograph I'd found in Miller's pocket, the one with my name on the back. I told her I'd found it in his equipment after he died, that he'd wanted her to know how much his family meant to him. I didn't tell her that he'd meant it for me. I've carried that lie for 17 years now. 17 years of waking up at 0300, drenched in sweat, seeing Miller's face in the sand. 17 years of flinching every time someone says his name. 17 years of knowing that Emma Miller is growing up without a father because of a split-second decision I made in a sandstorm in Iraq. The rational part of my mind knows it was an accident. Combat is chaos. Radio equipment fails. People die because of bad timing and worse luck. If I could go back and make the same decision with the same information I had at the time, I would probably do the same thing again, but knowing something intellectually and living with it emotionally are two different things entirely. I never applied for any commendations or medals for my service in Iraq. When people thank me for my service, I change the subject. When other veterans want to swap stories about combat, I find excuses to leave the room. I can't bear to hear their tales of heroism and brotherhood when I know what I am. I've tried therapy. 3 different therapists over the years, actually. I tell them about survivor's guilt, about PTSD, about the difficulty of readjusting to civilian life. I never tell them about Miller. I never tell them about the specific weight I carry, the specific name that's written on my soul in permanent ink. Sarah, my wife, knows something happened over there. She's too smart and too observant not to know, but she doesn't push. She just holds me when I wake up from the nightmares, makes coffee at 3 in the morning when I can't get back to sleep, never asks questions she knows I can't answer. My kids, Tyler and Madison, age 8 and 6, sometimes ask me about the war. They want to know if I ever shot anyone, if I was scared, if war is like the movies. I tell them that war is complicated, that sometimes good people have to make hard choices, that the important thing is that Daddy came home safe so he could be with them. I don't tell them that someone else didn't come home because of the choices their father made. I work at Henderson Hardware on Main Street, selling screws and paint and lawnmower parts to people who've never been further from home than the county fair. It's honest work, simple work. Work that doesn't require split-second life and death decisions. My boss, Bill Henderson, is a Vietnam veteran who understands that some days I need to work in the back room, away from customers, away from crowds. On Tuesday afternoons, I coach Tyler's Little League team, 8-year-olds playing baseball with all the seriousness of major leaguers. Tyler plays shortstop, just like I did when I was his age, just like Miller played in high school according to the stories he used to tell. Sometimes, when Tyler makes a particularly good play, I think about how Miller would have loved to see his daughter play sports, how he would have been the dad cheering loudest in the stands. Emma Miller would be 20 now, old enough to vote, to drink, to serve in the military herself. I've looked her up on social media a few times over the years, just to see how she turned out. She looks like her father, the same smile, the same eyes, the same stubborn chin. She's studying to be a nurse. She posts pictures of herself volunteering at veterans' hospitals. In her Facebook profile, it says she wants to help veterans because her father died serving his country, and she wants to honor his sacrifice by taking care of the soldiers who made it home. She has no idea that one of those soldiers, the one who might need her help the most, is the same man who killed her father. There are different kinds of guilt. There's the guilt you feel when you eat the last piece of cake or forget to call your mother on her birthday. There's the guilt you feel when you make a mistake at work or say something hurtful to someone you love. And then there's the guilt that lives in your bones, that changes the color of everything you see, that makes you question whether you deserve the life you're living. I have a good life now, a wife who loves me, children who think I'm a hero, a job that pays the bills, a house with a yard where we grow tomatoes and corn every summer. By any objective measure, I'm one of the lucky ones. I made it home. I readjusted. I built something meaningful out of the wreckage of war. But I know the price of that life. I know the name of the man who paid it. Every year on March 15th, the anniversary of Miller's death, I drive to the Veterans Cemetery about an hour from our house. Not the one where Miller is buried. That's in Cincinnati, and I've never had the courage to go back there. But this cemetery has a memorial wall with the names of local soldiers who died in Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't go there to pray or to ask for forgiveness. I go there to remember, to say Miller's name out loud to someone, even if it's just to a piece of granite that can't hear me, to promise that I haven't forgotten who he was, what he meant to his family, what his death cost the world. James Miller, 24 years old, husband to Linda, father to Emma, son to Robert and Helen Miller of Cincinnati, Ohio, lover of baseball and bad jokes and 3 a.m. feeding sessions with his baby daughter, a man who volunteered for extra patrols because sitting still made him think too much, a man who took pictures of everything so his daughter would know where her daddy had been, a man who died because his friend made a mistake in a sandstorm in Iraq. The official record will never change. The Army doesn't reopen investigations into 17-year-old friendly fire incidents based on the confessions of guilt-ridden veterans. Miller's name is on the memorial wall as a hero who died fighting for his country, and that's probably how it should be. The truth wouldn't bring him back, wouldn't ease his family's pain, wouldn't change anything except to add one more layer of grief to a story that already has too many. But the truth exists, whether it's in any official record or not. And sometimes the truth needs to be spoken, even if it's only spoken to strangers on the internet, even if it changes nothing, even if it only serves to transfer some small portion of the weight from one man's shoulders to the collective memory of people who never knew James Miller, but who might remember his name for a few minutes after this video ends. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if telling this story will make the nightmares stop or make them worse. I don't know if Emma Miller will somehow hear this and recognize her father's story. I don't know if Linda is still alive, still mourning, still wondering exactly how her husband died in that sandstorm in Al Anbar province. I only know that I've carried this alone for 17 years, and maybe it's time to let others help carry it. If you're a veteran watching this, if you've made decisions in combat that haunt you, if you carry names in your wallet or your heart or carved into your soul, know that you're not alone. The weight doesn't get lighter, but it gets more bearable when it's shared. If you're a family member of someone who died in Iraq or Afghanistan, know that your loved one's sacrifice meant something to the people who served with them. Even when everything went wrong, even when the worst possible thing happened, they were loved by their brothers and sisters in arms. They are remembered, they are missed. And if you're just someone who stumbled across this story, someone who has never worn a uniform or heard a shot fired in anger, remember that freedom isn't free. Remember that young men and women are still making impossible choices in impossible situations, still coming home changed, still carrying weights that the rest of us can't see. Some memories fade with time, The taste of your grandmother's apple pie, the sound of your first car's engine, the face of your high school girlfriend. But some memories never fade. They live in you like scars, like tattoos, like names written in permanent ink across your heart. James Miller, March 15th, 2008. Al-Anbar Province, Iraq. He was my best friend, and I had to kill him. His memory deserves more than my guilt. It deserves to be shared, to be honored, to live in more places than just the dark corners of one man's conscience. Subscribe to this channel, share this video, leave a comment with the name of someone you don't want the world to forget, because that's what we owe the dead, not just our grief, but our memory, not just our sorrow, but our commitment to keep their stories alive. Some names must never be forgotten. James Miller is one of them.